Cliffo here, back from the USA, where it's been spring, it's been hot, it's been open. Here it's cool, it's browns and ambers and reds. It's autumn here in Australia. Here's another episode of Waving Green. Here's 5 things that I've picked up marshalling in the USA. Let's get on with it.
Is all stations waving green?
Impression number 1, scale. Everything was big here. You'd expect that in America, I guess. MotoGP at the Circuit of the Americas, fondly known as COTA, straight away showed the scale of the track and of the support for the event. The first thing to really notice was the marshal shed. A demountable building, plenty of room for seating, plenty of room for handing out equipment, plenty of room for the serving of meals, breakfast and dinner, lunch being delivered out to the track, at least for those who were volunteers, just showed the amount of investment into both the track and into support for all participants in the event, but certainly for the marshals. The second noteworthy mention is for the training. Training commenced through online sessions conducted well before the event. They were well attended online and were very well constructed by David Hawley, the Chief Marshal with decades of experience. These sessions were repeated in person at the track on the day before the event and were repeated to a large degree every day with reminders of the most important factors before going out on track. The scale of the training, the depth of the training, and the amount of technical support put into preparing the training materials was exemplary. As far as procedures were concerned, there was little difference between Australian practice and American practice, although some of the terminology used did make a difference. We say race control, they say control. Flag practice is much the same, except they don't do double yellows. Essentially they have static single yellows preceding and at the point of an incident, with a waved yellow if there is something happening between the yellow lines or is otherwise dangerous. It's a bit of a difference, but it's the same as when we have MotoGP and they change the rules. One thing that was nice to see is that the integration of light panel control and flag posts is starting to get a little bit more evolved than what we saw at Phillip Island 2 years ago, where we ended up with so many flag points it got beyond ridiculous. Panel-controlled sectors are the defining definition of any particular sector within a track. That is, between one light panel and the next is its own sector, with flags located within essentially dictated by what's happening with the lights. It makes some sense when explained properly, and Dave Hawley did a great job of explaining exactly how it was set up, including with some flag posts that are known as standby points, where they don't wave a yellow flag at all, but make all other calls required during a race event. Light panel controllers were different. This first one was the one that was used at the Circuit of the Americas, with this other second one that I've taken from flag marshals of the world, just to demonstrate that there are different controllers around the world that one may have to get used to. Interestingly, panel controllers are dedicated staff, not always located with a flag post, so one has to listen out to what is happening on a track during an event so that we integrate lights and flags to get the messages out to the riders whenever there is an incident within a particular sector. My fourth one's only a short mention really. It's the issue of paid versus volunteer marshals. In America, there's a dedicated business, and perhaps there's several businesses, I don't know, that is essentially an agency that pays for marshals to come and work at tracks. The rate is only around $100 a day as I understand it, but the majority of the marshals here at the Road Atlanta event for MotoAmerica, the second event of my trip to America, the vast majority were paid. That means they don't get a meal delivered, they don't get any of the other perks and perks, but they do get paid, and it seems to be popular enough. Being paid seems to attract enough people through the agency, and of course puts the responsibility for the number of people turning up on the agency and not on an individual volunteer who may or may not value the offering that's made as a volunteer. I was certainly happy to work as a volunteer because I had access to the MotoAmerica hospitality tent for breakfast, lunch, and we had a thank you dinner. But it was interesting that because the paid marshals wouldn't attend that, there was very few of us at the actual event. An interesting concept. I'm not sure how it would go in Australia, but it seems necessary in America to get enough people to come to the track to run events. And of course, the people. But there's no real difference there. Marshals are wonderful people around the world, all the way from Beth Miller, who came to Phillip Island 2 years ago and put out an open invitation for Australian marshals to come and work at the Circuit of the Americas, to Joel and Clarissa, my humble hosts of Austin, Texas, who I met 2 years ago at Phillip Island, and they've paid me the compliment of having an open invitation to visit them anytime. Dave Hawley, truly a force of nature in the motorcycling world, a man of exquisite knowledge, long history, and infinite wisdom. Rick Overton, an adopted Australian of Austin, Texas, who was my sector chief at MotoGP and was a great boss to work for. To Mary, who I shared a corner with at the Road Atlanta event. To any number of other great Americans I met along the way. To Chantal Spurgeon, flag waver extraordinaire and deputy sector chief. To this crowd who I kept bumping into around the place with their colourful mental health awareness shirts, which were a great hit with the American crowds and hopefully is raising some much needed funds for mental health awareness in the building industry. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed the trip in America. It was great meeting so many new friends and old friends. It was terrific to have a look at the countryside from the back of a motorcycle. That's perhaps going to be another video. But to marshal in a different country and get a different perspective on how they do things is always a learning experience if you're open to watching what's going on around you and being open-minded about what you're learning. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and Facebook, and until next time, keep the shiny side up.